everyone. We're going to get started in just a moment. Let people queue in here. And once we wait to get started, go ahead and drop in the chat where you're from. All right. We'll get started in about 30 seconds. Right. All right. So, welcome to Avoid Churn Retention with Precision. This is going to be a workshop between us. And since it's a workshop, I want to start off by setting some ground rules. First, mute by default if you're with me on Zoom, or if you are with me on YouTube and LinkedIn, not so much of an issue, but in general, we want to mute by default. Wherever you are, I would love for you to use reactions. So if something is good, bad, happy or sad, please let me know through your reactions. I would love for you to be prepared. So if you need to go get a glass of water, good time to do that. If you want to grab your notes, it's a great time to do that as well. I also want to let you know that this is recorded. And so if you miss it, you can check it out on LinkedIn or YouTube. And I will be sending the slides afterwards for those who want them. Just simply send me a note and I will get these slides over to you. And regardless of wherever you are, please use the chat. I want to hear from you. I'm very excited to hear from you. It's a two-way conversation that we're having, right? I'm going to give you some concepts and you're going to give me some answers and we're going to learn together. If you are ready to move forward, go ahead and press 1. All right. So you may be asking about questions. What do I do with my questions? I have a lot of questions. Well, great. I love questions. There are 3 ways you can ask them. One, you can wait till the QA section, right? I'll have a QA section at the end. You can raise your hand if you're on Zoom, or you can just submit it in LinkedIn and I will answer it. Even if I do not answer it, one of the benefits of writing it down is that I will get to it eventually. Either after if I somehow miss it, I'll get to it after the live stream. But it's there. You'll get your question answered. Second, use the chat. I'll try to answer your questions in flow. If it comes in flow, sometimes I'll answer it, and sometimes I'll wait till Q&A. But leverage the chat as a way to communicate. And then lastly, there is a feedback form at the end. I'm going to ask you to sign and give me feedback. On there, there's an option to ask a question. So if you have something that's in depth or something that's private you want to ask me, there's an opportunity there. And so I welcome your questions, and I hope we have a great conversation as we move forward. And so let's get started. There's one thing I want you to leave this workshop with it is the idea that specificity is it. Specificity is king. Specificity is queen. Specificity is going to be the difference on if you are going to keep your customer and understand why you kept your customer or not. So whenever you can, I think it's your job as a product person, whether it's a designer, engineer, manager, it's your job to get as specific as possible. And so we're here to talk about user drop off in particular, right? That's where I want us to focus our attention. User drop off. So let's define it. User drop off is when users are active customers and they just stop using your platform. This is specific for SaaS platforms where your user is how you generate revenue. And so you want to make sure that that user is not dropping off, right? Which is why you're here. Now, there are different reasons for user drop off. Like, for example, there are users that just don't need it anymore. And there's not much you can do about that, right? If using a resume service and I get a job, I'm going to drop off of the resume SaaS service. Sometimes users encounter another force. If they're using a tool and then there's a regulatory change, right? Maybe I stop. Maybe this is not available in my country anymore. Or maybe it becomes illegal. And that becomes a whole different conversation, which is less about specificity and more about is this worth fighting against or working with that regulatory change, I should say. But the one that we are talking about is when we fail. And that is when we don't have a clear understanding of our customer and they leave to another competitor because they do. And so fixing that drop off is all about finding the specificity within our work and within our product and how that solves the problem for your customer. So to help walk us through, we're going to put on our Bobco shoes. Now, Bobco is an amalgamation of companies that I have consulted for or worked for. And so whenever you have a workshop with me, you'll see Bobco because I don't want to get sued. But in general, right, what I want us to focus on is Bobco. And Bobco's a pet company. They sell pet supplies. And they're currently having a high abandonment rate. Not when users visit, not when users add to cart, but between adding to cart and payment, there's an issue which signifies to them that something is wrong, right? If a customer is willing to go and visit the website and they're willing to add something to the cart and just not pay, something's up and they want to figure out what that is. And so as I'm talking about this, right, we go back to fixing drop off is about specificity. And where does specificity come from? It comes from three places. One, understanding who your customer is. Two, understanding what problems exist for your customers and if they're worth solving. And three, can we solve them? Is it worth solving? And so when you're specific with the who, what, and can, you leave with a story, opportunities, and an ability to prioritize. And so that is what this workshop is going to be about today. I want you to be able to think about the who, the what, and a can within your product. And I want you to leave here with the tools to start thinking about story, opportunity, and prioritization. Let's start with knowing your customer. So who is your customer? It's a good question to jolt us awake because if you don't know who exactly your customer is, how can you tell a story? How do you have a hero for that story? And so what you should start with is asking yourself a few questions. Who are they? What is important to that customer right now? How do they engage with your website and application? What do they want? If they had to do one thing using your service, what would it be? And when do they have that problem? And lastly, what is scary to your customer? What pain are they trying to avoid? And what is their nightmare scenario? Now, if you're looking at these questions and you're like, I don't know how to answer them, what I would say is there's an opportunity for you to go talk to your customers, engage with your customers, and start asking them these types of questions. right? And if you're asking them these types of questions and you combine that with the data that you are capturing within your product, there's an opportunity to really understand the story of what they are and who they are. And if you haven't done so already, it's a great time to create a persona based on this information. And so, why do you want to create a persona? Well, a persona gives folks a name, and names helps us remember the story. We have a hero. Then you're able to define a job to be done. Very simply, a job to be done is why are they at your website? Why are they at your app? What's important to them? If we can give them a name, if we can tell them, if we can say what's super important to them, and then lastly, we can say what they're scared of, right? They're spending money with you because they're scared of something. If you can clearly say that, then you have a very good understanding of who your customer is. And so, how do you get that understanding? How do you build that understanding with your customer? Well, as I mentioned before, uh, you got to talk to them. So, spend some time talking with your customer and do that however you can. Sure, you can give them structured interviews, but there are also opportunities to just go find where they are. If you're at a conference, go just talk to a couple people and learn a bit more about why they're there. Um, if they're on message boards, snoop the message boards, snoop Reddit, right? Figure out who they are, what's important to them. If you have data analysis tools, this is a great place to combine what you're hearing with what you're seeing. And sometimes it's on point, right? Sometimes the story is clear, and sometimes it's not. And so, whenever you have a divergence in quantitative, i.e., the numbers, and qualitative, right, i.e., the story, there's something worth digging into, right? Again, everything that you're doing is trying to find that specificity. So you're going to continue to dig deep in both until you get to some connection point. And then you're going to map that journey. How do they start and where do they end? Because knowing your customer qualifies your product. That means you can tell what's good or bad. Is this worth it or not? Is this worth our time? We can start to tell a story about the product, and also we can start to tell a story about our customer, which not only supports the product team, but also supports sales, customer success, really the rest of the company. And so if you're able to tell a clear story, it's helpful to everyone. So it's worth your time to understand what that story is. In Bobco's case, we have a persona, we called him Eric, and Eric is looking to buy things for his dog digitally. He's a nomad, he travels the world, and so he's looking to just buy things for his dog and have it shipped to a P.O. box somewhere. And the one thing that he's scared of is being stuck with a bill. And so, our first exercise of the day is going to be you writing about your customer. So, you're going to write a quick persona, right? And it doesn't need to be precise, right? What's important here is, do you know their name? Do you have a name for them or a way to uh, clearly identify them? Do you understand what they want, and do you understand what they fear? And if you are missing any of these, right, uh, ask yourself, how are you going to learn about more after this workshop? And so here's an example here. You have 5 minutes. Write your answers here in the chat, and looking forward to seeing what you write. All right. I'll give folks another 30, 45 seconds to get sorted on this. Whatever you have, I tell you, go ahead and hit the enter key. Feel free to hit that enter key. So, one thing that I think this exercise helps you do as a um, as a product person or as this person working on a product is it starts to help you key in on those wants and fears, right? And if you're having trouble pointing that out, if you're having trouble with clarity around that, then right, it reminds you of how much work uh, you'll need to prioritize when it comes to knowing who your customer is. When you want to be specific, this is probably the most important part, right? This is why we start with it. Because if you know who your customer is and you know what scares them and you know what they want, right? Everything else that we talk about is just a matter of aligning that with these concepts. So I have two resources. If you want to get better at that, talking to your customers, one of my favorite books on the subject is called Product Research Rules. And think of it as a research compendium. If you want to know how to research, you want to know build how to build a research practice, you want to know different types of research, this book is a wonderful tool to have on your bookshelf. Um, it's so wonderful. You will even find someone familiar giving it a blurb on the back. That person is me. I'm a big fan of the book. Another book that I love is Talking to Humans. Right? It's a quick, great read on just building skills to go and talk to your customers. Um, as I mentioned, getting comfortable talking to the people who buy your product is a key part to being either a founder or a product person, right? Who's looking to build products in a product model. Because that conversation gives us a clear who, uh, and that clear who becomes a hero in the journey, right? We now have a way of qualifying if the work that we're doing is good for that person or is not. And so, with that, let's move over to what. Basically, understanding what the problem is, what your problems are, what's stopping you, right? What's stopping you from giving that hero a clear win? What is stopping you from making that hero successful? And so this is when you take the energy that you had for your who and you put it back into your product. Clearly, how does your product work and how does that product supposed to tackle the problems that your customer is having? There are different interactions that guide us to the outcome that we're looking for. What are they? How do we know they're successful? What has to happen internally for it to work? And so, as I mentioned before, what outcomes should they have? What makes them jump for joy? We built it for a reason. What is that reason? How close is that outcome to the outcome that customers have? And lastly, what's frustrating? What's frustrating to your customers? What is the gap between what we sell and how it works? What are the bugs? It's a good opportunity to go and they call it dog fooding, right? You go and dog food your product. You uh, try to go use it, or you go watch customers use it, which is even better. If you have an opportunity to watch someone use your product, that'll give you a good understanding of what's frustrating. So I like to, what is your app? What do you see? What do you hear? What do you feel? Right? What are people saying about your product? What is visibly wrong? What are you seeing? And based on your research, what can be better? What do you feel? So, how do you identify these problems inside of your app? Well, besides using it, there's some great tools. One is to talk to your customer support uh, team. They are dealing with problems and bugs all the time. So, customer support, customer success, uh, tech support, IT, engineering support, if they got support or success in their name, talk to them because they're going to give you an understanding of where the customer is feeling or how they're feeling. They're not going to be able to give you exactly what to do. You may not want to listen to them exactly what to do, but how the customer is feeling, that's a good source. Second, watch customers using the product. If you have an app that allows you to watch your customers use your product like full story, great opportunity to just sit and watch. Um, or listen to customer phone calls or support calls if you can. And then lastly is service blueprinting. Service blueprinting is a workshop that has you identify each interaction in the app and how it affects both the front of the house and the back of the house. The front of the house being um, things that people see, the back of the house being the things that people don't see. And back when I talked about interactions, it's a great tool that will help you break out those interactions and see who's affected by what. And so uh, this is not an exact science. There's a level of taste that goes along with what you hear, what you see, and what you feel. But you want to back that with evidence. And if you can do those two things, you'll end up with opportunities. Now, um, here's where we're talking about back to Bobco. We find out that Eric, our persona, is frustrated by a couple of things. One, unclear shipping costs. Eric is surprised by the end cost, limited pay options, and an unclear return policy. And so these become the problem areas in which we need to go fix. Uh, we need to go see what opportunities exist and how can we fix them. Now we'll talk about that in a bit. But for you, now is an opportunity for another exercise. Uh, 5 minutes to write the problems you face. What's the source of the problem? How did you learn about the problem itself? And what changes can you make to tackle that problem? And if you need to learn more after this workshop, uh, say, I need to do X to get more information. And so you have 5 minutes. I'll see you in a bit. All right. So, everyone, I'm going to give you about 30 seconds here to get those final um, ideas in the chat. All right. So, if you want to get better at identifying opportunities, I think a great book and a great person, uh, both to go follow and to read, is Teresa Torres and her continuous discovery habits. It's a great book that basically takes this chapter, expands it out, and gives you everything you need to identify opportunities and then to share them with the team that you're working with. Because that clear what gives us a specific challenge in that journey, right? When we talked about the who gives us a hero, a clear what gives us the challenge. And now let's talk about the final piece of this puzzle, which is know your operations, which I boil down to can. What can you do, right? I know personally that the Earth is falling apart. Can I build a Mars base mission full of things? I can't, right? I can only do what I can. And so maybe that looks like picking up trash or um, recycling or, eating less meat. Our teams are limited by the amount of throughput that they can accomplish, meaning we have limits. We're not uh, we can't just do everything that we want to do. And so uh, you need to be able to prioritize what's important. So asking yourself and looking at the team that you're working with and saying, what skills do we have? The tools, what tools do we have available? Then thinking about your throughput, how fast you can do it. Is there a faster way that we can learn something about our hero or about our challenge? And what takes the least amount of effort from the team? You want to focus on high value, low effort, right? Unless the value is high enough, then you can go to high effort, high value. What else is happening? What else is important for the team? What other projects are in play? Are there ideas that we've come up with that are in line with this big initiative? This is where things like project management and change management do become something that you need to consider, right? There's a push against project management and product management, but the truth is, if you don't have a project manager inside of your team, I think it's important that the product manager takes some role in setting up what's happening and giving everyone else context. And so that is laying out what else is in play. One of my favorite two by twos plots that I know and I use is qualifying effort and value and then placing it on a chart or on a plot. And so you always want to ask yourself, what is the effort level? Meaning, how much energy is this going to take to succeed? Or what is the value? And what is the value? Um, some people like to add impact to this as well. I'm all for it. But the important thing is effort and value. What is the effort? What is the value? And you want to focus on the top part of this chart here. You want to focus as much as you can on things that have high value. I, as I mentioned before, anything that's low effort, high value, you want to take on as soon as possible because that often has outsized gains without much effort. But it takes a lot of research to understand what is low effort and high value. You got to really know those first two parts we talked about: who your customer is and what they are. What are the problems and challenges they face? Um, Next is a high effort and high value, right? Which might be obvious. It might be something that has to get done. But uh, if it's high enough value, if it's that important, then we need to at least be conscious of the effort, so that when we communicate what our availabilities are, we're able to do so. How do you get this done as a product person? I think it's important that one, you talk to your team and ask them what's going on. Uh, Something as simple as a check-in on um, what's currently happening, what work are you doing, um, gives people a sense and can give you a sense of where the team is in terms of ability to accomplish what they and accomplish things. Have a list of your opportunities and tie them to value and effort. If you don't work on the engineering side of the house, this is a uh, great thing to bring engineering in on. When I was at this company called Informed, and I was the director of product, I used to bring the engineering managers in, and we used to have a quick meeting every Monday to look at the opportunities, look at the challenges, and say what are our quick wins? What are things that we can do very quickly that have medium to high value, right? And so that's not possible if we weren't listing those opportunities. We got a lot done as a result of that. Lastly, you want to create a source of truth. This is a thing that when I go out and consult, I find a lot of teams miss, and they miss it because it feels like it's a lot of work and very little return. And the reason why they get little return from that source of truth is they don't keep it updated and they don't have it open and available with each meeting. And so a really good source of truth can save hours, can save weeks, can save months of decision making and scrambling and team scrum and all of these other things that waste our time. A clear source of truth that lists our who's, our what's, and what we can do gives people a shorthand to be able to execute on projects. Because the truth is, we only have so much time. And it's important for you to pick wisely, understand what needs to be done, and then help guide the team into doing that. So, in Bobco's case, they could change the payment processor, which high effort, didn't know what the value was. They could highlight costs, which was medium effort and medium value, and then they could change their return policy, which was low effort and high value. They ended up focusing on changing their return policy, obviously, right? Because it got them, it started to increase that clear rate, right? Less people were dropping off because they dealt with uh, the fear back with Eric, who didn't want to be stuck with a bill. Now, it is time for you to uh, do a little project management. Write out the top 3 projects that are active. You don't have to be specific, right? I don't want to understand what's going on in your company, but just give a list. Write the priority, why it's important, and ask yourself uh, if there's anything that can trump or beat those current projects. Is there anything that is that should be more important, especially if you wrote it today? All right, so you have 5 minutes. I'll see you in a bit. let's. All right. Let's get those answers in 30, 45 seconds. So one of my favorite books on this subject is called The Phoenix Project, and so it's based in DevOps, but there's so much I think that a product person can get out of this book, especially when it comes to wrangling a whole bunch of projects and getting teams focused, because that can is the last part of that specific path. If we have a specific hero, we have a specific problem or challenge, and then we have a specific path, we can now do all the things that we talked about here. We can build a story, we can clearly uh, set up opportunities, and we can understand our prioritization. And so, what I hope that last exercise did is at least put that frame in your head. Um, because what we talked about here is all about specificity. Fixing drop off is all about specificity. And so, if you can have a very clear who, a very clear what, and a very clear can, then it's just a matter of going out and executing. And so, I hope that this has been helpful, and I would love your feedback here. Um, and so, here's a link in the chat. I'd love for you to spend a minute or two just to fill that out, and help me make this better for you. Um, or if you have your phone, I hope you've taken it out and used the QR code. Either way, uh, very excited to hear back from you. Very excited to hear back. All right. For those who are finished, you might want to start thinking about the questions if you have them. If not, please finish the survey. Again, I'd love to hear from you. All right. So we have a few minutes for questions here. Uh, any questions? If there aren't, I'm more than happy to give you a few minutes back. And just to let you know, uh, find me on LinkedIn. Send an email if you have any questions. I'm more than happy to answer them and be as helpful as I can. Uh, with that, thank you all for joining me, and I hope you have a fantastic day. Oh, wait, Diane asks, can you tell me more about the product research book? What information does it provide that you think helped you? Okay, sure. So the product research book, product research rules. Um, think of it as a like a glossary for how to do product different types of research, whether it's quantitative or qualitative, and what it helps me with, and um, I think it's I think it's one of the books that I go back to most often. Is sometimes it gives me an appreciation of the basics, things that I think I may be doing right, and it's a good check. Also, because context changes and the types of research that might be better or worse for the particular problem that I'm facing, that can change a lot. What that book does for me is, if I'm facing a particularly new challenge, I might find a different concept that I hadn't thought of before. And then I could use that book as a way to guide me through. And so I think it's a fantastic book for folks who are really looking to up their research game or get better at product research. Thank you, Diane. All right. If that's it, thank you all. I'll catch you later. Have a great day. Bye.